Here's the thing nobody tells you. The difference between debt and equity financing isn't just about money. It's about control, dilution, and whether you keep your company or you hand it over. I'm Samuel from IRC Partners. Between our firm, our advisors, and our network, we've helped raise over $37 billion for companies. And I'm telling you, 7 out of 10 founders choose the wrong financing method. It's insane. They either give away too much equity they didn't need to, or they take on debt they can't service. So in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to choose. By the end, you'll know which one is right for your company at your stage with your goals. And here's a spoiler alert, the answer isn't what most people think. Let me break down what we're actually talking about here. Debt financing equals you borrow money. Obviously, you pay it back with interest. Makes sense? Lender has no ownership stake at all. That's right. You keep 100% control. You're tracking so far, right? Pretty easy. Equity financing equals you sell a portion of your ownership. Investors get a piece of your company. You keep control usually, but you're sharing profits forever. Sounds simple, right? But here's where it gets complicated. The choice between debt and equity isn't just which one should I pick. It's how much control do I want to keep? How fast do I need to grow? Can I actually afford to pay back debt? Am I willing to give away ownership? What stage is my company currently at? What do my investors expect from me as the owner? These are the questions that actually matter. And the answers are different for every founder. And here's what we see happen all the time. A founder gets offered a $2 million line of credit at 8% interest. Sounds great, right? But they don't realize they could have raised $2 million in equity at a lower dilution rate, or vice versa. They give away 20% equity when a $500,000 loan would have done the job. And that's a $50 million plus mistake if your company exits at $250 million. So let's fix that. Here's how to choose. Let's start on the debt side. Here's why debt is actually incredible if you use it right. When you take debt, the lender has zero ownership, as we said, zero board seats, zero say in your strategy. You make the decisions. You keep the upside. You keep the company. We had a founder raise $1.5 million in debt at 7% interest. 3 years later, his company is worth $80 million. He owes back $1.5 million plus interest. He keeps $78.5 million. Now compare that to equity. If he'd raised $1.5 million in equity at 20% dilution, he'd have given away $16 million in value forever. That's the power of debt. Equity dilutes you. Every round your ownership percentage goes down. Series A, Series B, Series C. You're getting smaller and smaller. With debt, your ownership stays the same. Here's a real example. Founder came to us, starts with 100% ownership. He raises Series A at 25% dilution, now owns 75%. Series B at 20% dilution, now owns 60%. Series C at 15% dilution, now owns 51%. By the time they exit, they own half of their company. With debt, they still own 100%. With debt, you know exactly what you owe. $1.5 million at 8% over 5 years equals X dollars per month. Pretty straightforward, simple, done. With equity, you don't know what you owe. If your company grows 10 times, your investors expect 10 times returns. If you don't deliver, they're unhappy. If you do deliver, you've created massive expectations. Interest payments on debt are tax deductible. Equity isn't. This matters more than people realize. But here's the catch with debt, and it's an important one. And this is where most founders completely mess up. Debt has one massive problem. You got to pay it back. No matter what happens to your company, you owe that money. So let's say you raise $2 million in debt at 8% interest over, say, 5 years. That's roughly $50,000 per month you have to pay back. If your company hits a rough patch, a market downturn, lost customer, product pivot, you still owe $50,000 per month. With equity, if you hit a rough patch, your investors typically say, okay, let's adjust the plan accordingly. They've invested in your success. With debt, the bank says, pay us. We had a SaaS company founder raise $2 million in debt here a year or two ago. Year 2, he lost his biggest customer, 30% of his revenue. He still had to pay $50,000 per month on debt. His runway went from 24 months down to 8 months. He had to raise emergency equity at a down round. Massive dilution. If he'd raised equity from the start, the investor would have said, let's figure this out together. Banks, they're conservative. They want to see cash flow, profitability, predictable revenue. If you're a pre-revenue startup with a big vision, banks won't touch you. Equity investors, they'll fund moonshots typically. Some small business debt requires a personal guarantee. That means if your company can't pay, you have to pay personally with your own assets. Equity, no personal guarantee. You're only risking what you invested. And this is why we tell early stage founders, don't take debt yet. You're not ready. But once you have revenue and cash flow, debt becomes your best friend. Remember the founder I mentioned at the start, the one who made the $5 million mistake? He was at stage 2, early revenue. He took debt when he should have taken equity. He couldn't service the debt. He had to raise equity at terrible terms. If he'd used this framework, he would have known at stage 2, take equity. Don't take debt yet. Different founder, different stage. He was at stage 4, mature revenue. He raised equity when he should have taken debt. He diluted unnecessarily. He gave away ownership he didn't need to. If he'd used this framework, he would have known at stage 4, debt is your best friend. Now let's talk about equity. Here's why equity is powerful. You raise $2 million in equity, you don't owe a single dollar back. If your company goes to zero, you owe nothing. The investor loses their $2 million, not you. This is huge for early stage companies. You can take risks, you can pivot, you can experiment. When you take equity, you're not just getting money, you're getting strategic advice, network connections, credibility. Investors believe in you. Help recruiting, help with partnerships, help navigating challenges. A bank gives you money, an investor gives you money plus a partner. We had a founder raise $1 million in equity from a top tier VC, and that VC introduced him to 5 enterprise customers. Those customers became his first $2 million in revenue. Ta-da! The money was nice, but the introductions were worth 10 times more. When you're raising equity, you have money to hire. When you're bootstrapped or debt funded, you're limited. Equity also lets you give employees stock options. Now, that attracts better talent. When you raise equity from a top VC, the market notices. Customers notice. Employees notice. I mean, it's a sign that you're serious in the marketplace. But equity has a dark side that founders don't often talk about. And here's the truth about equity. You're giving away your company. When you raise a Series A at 25% dilution, you lose that 25% forever. A Series B at 20% dilution, you lose another 20% of what you had left. By Series D, you might own 30% of your own company. But remember, how much does Jeff Bezos own in Amazon? There's a reason why these guys are billionaires. There's a real strategic edge on raising equity. So here's a real example. Founder starts with 100%. Series A, 25% dilution equals 75%. Series B, 20% dilution equals 60%. Series C, 15% dilution equals 51%. Series D, 15% dilution equals 43%. Now he built the company, he owns 43%. Once you have investors, you have a board. The board makes decisions. If your investor owns 25%, they probably have a board seat. They can block major decisions. If you raise from multiple investors, you might lose voting control entirely. Here's a real example. Founder wants to pivot the product, but his Series A investor disagrees. They've got a board seat. They block it. Founder cannot pivot. When you raise equity, investors expect returns, big returns. If you raise $2 million at a $10 million valuation, they expect you to exit at $100 million plus 5 to 10x return. If your company is on track for a $30 million exit, the investor is unhappy. They expected $100 million. Now, this creates pressure, constant pressure. Once you take equity, you can't just cash out and move on, say sayonara. You're locked in until an exit, acquisition, or IPO. If you want to sell the company in 5 years, but your investors want to hold for 10, you're stuck. I mean, I've seen founders take equity and regret it, not because the money was bad, but because they lost control of their own company. I've also seen founders avoid equity and absolutely regret it. They grew too slow, missed market opportunities, got rushed by competitors who had already raised capital. So which one is right for you? And here's how to actually choose. I call it the stage-based framework. You have no revenue, you're building a product. The answer is equity or bootstrap. Why? Because you can't service debt. You have no cash flow. Banks won't lend to you anyway. Raise equity from angels or early stage VCs, sometimes even SFOs, or bootstrap if you can. If you have customers, you have some revenue, the answer is still mostly equity, but consider a small debt line. Why? You're still too risky for major debt, but you might qualify for a small line of credit, $100,000 to maybe $500,000 million to bridge between equity rounds. Use equity for growth, use debt for working capital. Now here's a real example. SaaS company at 200,000 ARR raises $1 million in seed equity. They also get $250,000 line of credit for inventory and payroll. The equity funds growth. The debt funds operations. You have repeatable revenue. You have unit economics. You're scaling. Congratulations. The answer is primarily equity, but debt becomes viable. Why? You can now service debt. You have cash flow. Makes sense, right? You can take on a debt line at reasonable terms. Strategy. Raise equity for growth. Take debt for working capital or equipment. Here's a real example. SaaS company at $2 million ARR raises $500,000 Series A in equity. They also take a $2 million debt line. The equity funds sales and marketing. The debt funds infrastructure and payroll during growth. You're profitable or close to it. You have strong cash flow. The answer is debt becomes your best friend. Why? You can service debt easily. You don't need to dilute further. Debt is cheaper than equity at this stage. Strategy. Use debt for working capital, equipment, acquisitions. Use equity sparingly, only if you need massive capital for a big move. And here's a real example. A company at $10 million ARR is profitable. They want to acquire a competitor for $5 million. They came to us. Instead of raising equity, which would dilute, they take a $5 million debt line at 6% interest. They pay it back in 3 years, no dilution. Remember the founder I mentioned at the start, the one who made the $5 million mistake? He was at stage 2, early revenue. He took debt when he should have taken equity. He couldn't service the debt, had to raise equity at terrible terms. If he'd used this framework, he would have known at stage 2, take equity. Don't take debt yet. Different founder, different stage. He was at stage 4, mature revenue. He raised equity when he should have taken debt. He diluted unnecessarily. He gave away ownership he didn't need to. If he'd used this framework, he would have known. Again, at stage 4, debt is your best friend. But here's what most people miss. The best answer is usually both. Debt and equity, not one or the other. Again, equity for growth, debt for operations. That's the winning formula. All right, let's wrap this up. Here's what you need to know. Debt equals you keep control, no dilution, but you have to pay it back every single month, no matter what. A lot of stress. Equity equals you get support and capital, but you have to give away part ownership. The right choice depends on your stage. Pre-revenue, always equity. Early revenue, mostly equity. Small debt, possibly. Growth revenue, equity plus debt. Mature revenue, mostly debt, minimal equity. The winning move, use both. Debt for operations, equity for growth. So here's what to do next. Number 1, identify your stage. Where are you at? Are you pre-revenue, early revenue, growth, or mature? Number 2, download our free capital structure guide. I'll put the link in the description below. And it shows you the exact debt to equity ratio for your stage. And number 3, if you're raising capital in the next 90 days, book a free strategy call with our team to help you decide if you're ready for institutional capital. We'll audit your financing plan, your capital stack, your go-to-market strategy, and tell you exactly what to raise. So the link is below. And if this was helpful, smash that subscribe button because we're dropping a new capital raising video every single week here. I'm Samuel from IRC Partners. Now go raise the right way, will you please?